This and that. Let's set up our camera. See, wait a second. I want to use this camera. Just 1 second here. Take this out. Put that in. You keeping your eye on this?
Yeah, sure.
You're waiting to see what I do, huh? Come on, let's give us this camera. It's a much better camera than you guys have. Here we go. All right, cool. Turn up volume. No, I'm not going to do that, right? Okay. Recording. Like, what am I supposed to talk about? Like, I want to continue doing what we're learning. You know?
Yeah.
I should, right? Just do it any other way. We'll get to it. Okay. All right, everyone. Let's turn this off. Okay. You mean you couldn't hear me until now? I will talk louder than I've been talking. I'll talk loud. Okay. I'll talk, you know. All right. We're set to go. So, yeah, beautiful. It's a great opportunity here. Very great opportunity. Okay. So, I think what has brought all of you here together is a special day, Rosh Chodesh Iyar, which is a day that actually brings us into an unusual month. It's a month which doesn't have any of the chagim that we're used to meeting. It's a month which has actually become a time when we relate to modern history, current events. What happened to that little amplifier thing? That's this thing, right? Does this does this make my voice loud or something? No, doesn't really work? No, forget it. Okay. I will try to talk more loudly, but there are a few empty chairs over here, so if you want to come closer, it's a very long table. Yeah. Yeah, why don't you come down here? Look at all this. Got another meter over here. Anyhow, this is the volume of my voice. So yeah, so it's actually a day which connects us to very powerful influences that are going on across history, and specifically in modern history. And I'm referring to what we're going to be commemorating next week with Yom Ha'atzmaut, and then a few weeks later with Yom Shalayim. They just kind of popped up into ER, you know, the holiday with the month with no holidays. But they're actually appropriately placed in this month for reasons that I'd like to explore a little bit of. And then to connect it up to what I understand this day in terms of your being gathered here is devoted to, which is which is Ani Hashem Rofecha. Correct about that?
Yeah.
All right, I'm orienting
How did you
myself.
get
I'm orienting myself right now. Yeah, which has become, without going into the history of it, kind of a title for this month, which is related to the Iyar, Ani, the Aleph, and Hashem, the two Yuds, and Rofecha, the power of healing. Now, that's actually, although it's seems like a sort of a vague connection in a certain way, just to connect it through these letters and a abbreviation like that. When you look at the stories in the Torah, so you actually find that that verse is first spoken to the Jewish people after they had crossed Yam Suf, and they come to the other side. And listen to this story, because it's quite an important one in terms of the processes that we're going through after Pesach and towards Shavuot. They come to Yam Suf. They come to the Sea of Reeds, or the Sea of Endings, as it's called in the Zohar. Yam Suf, Sea of Endings. Yeah, and they're there on the boundary of it. The Saf is to be on the boundary. And they are completely perplexed as to how anything is supposed to move ahead, right? And we have this extraordinary description there, among other things, of people crying out, and Moshe crying out, and Hashem saying to Moshe, "Don't cry out." And that's explained in the Midrash. This is not a time where you're praying. This is something which is actually going to be emitted from a level which is beyond where prayer reaches, and which is beyond where prayer needs to reach. It's going to come from the, as I said before, Sof. It's going to come from the Ein Sof, from the endless one. And when they connect up to the Ein Sof, to the endless one, they will be able to cross over the sea, which is Yam Sof, the sea, which is the Sea of Endings, because they'll be aligned with that which has no end. So God says to Moshe, he says to him, Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'yisav. I'm in chapter 14 of Exodus, of Shemot. I'm talking like you don't know anything, okay? I hope that's good with you. Actually, it's really good for me. I like talking as if I don't know anything, because that's how I discover new things. So there they are, and Moshe hears from Hashem, Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'yisav. A very interesting statement. Just talk to them. Just talk to them, and they will begin traveling. Notice that God doesn't say to him, talk to them saying such and such. Usually it's like, Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'amart alehem. Speak to the Jewish people and say to them, right? Right? No, God just actually sounds like he leaves it open. Daber el b'nei Yisrael, just talk to them. Almost as if, whatever you want to say, doesn't really matter. Daber el b'nei Yisrael, just talk to them. Let them sense your presence. Let them sense the particular alignment which you're aligned with now. Let them experience something that is going to be coming through you. And then they will travel of their own. They will travel of their own. I'm a very easily distracted person, okay? And they will travel of their own. So Hashem then sends Moshe out, and he goes and he tells him to take the rod with him, right? But according to the Mefarshim, even that rod he takes, right? The staff of Moshe, according to the Rabbeinu B'chaye and the Medrash, actually, he tells Moshe, put that down. Like, just your hand. Don't use that, because we want this to be harem et matcha. Pick up the staff, the rod, and then according to most of the Mefarshim, and put it down on the side. Unate et yadcha al hayam. Stretch your hand out over the sea, uvikaye, and split it. And then the Jewish people will walk across it. Okay? So this is, first of all, it's just very important to get a sense of what's happening here. And this is all by way of introduction to what we're going to explore in a moment about what's special about this day. So there they are. This is actually happening on what was the seventh day of Pesach, right? That's when they cross over the sea. And then they go through this event. And when they come out the other side, it says, Vayar Yisrael et hayad hagdola asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim, vayiru ha'am et Adonai, vayaminu b'Adonai v'Moshe Avdo. Very powerful statement that they saw the great hand that Hashem had done with Egypt, right? This will spread out in a course that we're in, which is in a way sort of like a little bit of a hiatus from right now. Of course, which we're in and exploring the Haggadah, which we're going to continue after this class, but I don't think it would be fair to the people who came special for today. But it's very, very interesting. The Haggadah is going to pick up a lot on this, that it's the hand as opposed to just the finger. But nevertheless, they see the hand of Hashem, right? And then they have awe of Hashem, which is a play on words. Vayar Yisrael et hayad. And then Vayiru ha'am et Hashem, they have awe. You hear how seeing and having awe of are very related verbs, right? Very related root, because to be in the presence of Hashem, there's something about being in the presence of Hashem, which is all the time, right? I mean, it's not like Hashem isn't here now, but we're not exactly seeing him or sensing the depth of his presence. Okay, so it's only when you, so to speak, see him or become sensitized to his presence that you suddenly fall in awe with him. And then Vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe Avdo, then they put their faith in. It's not that they had faith in. They put their trust. Vayaminu means they put their trust in Hashem and in Moshe. And that was really, I mean, they had every good reason to, right? I mean, this is not faith in the sense of something that, doesn't make sense. It makes all the sense in the world. I mean, after you just walk through the sea on dry land and you watch the Egyptians drown, you can put your faith in God. That's like, I just want to throw that out there, because faith and having faith is not the way it's usually translated religiously speaking, which is like believe in something which is not reasonable. Emunah has everything to do with that which your experience has taught you. Emunah is your experience has taught you that you can trust this, right? That's why Emunah and Ima, mother, come together, because the child really learns trust from mom, Ima, mom. In English and in Hebrew, there's this Emunah presence of like, you can rely on her. And she learns that most initially, hopefully if mom is normal, right, which is 99% of the cases, she comes through. She provides the child with his or her milk, responsive. That's our first contact with emunah, is through Ima and the reliability. And here they're having this contact with emunah through this very powerful experience, which again was surprisingly, without them being commanded to do it, no command, just God said, talk to them and they'll start walking. So if it's talk to them and they'll start walking, that means that they had to sense something from within, right? To know that it's time to start walking. And just like it wasn't a time for prayer to reach these higher levels that go beyond the delimitations that are in the act of prayer and in vocalizing prayer and giving it words, etc. So also, it's not a particular mitzvah for you to give them, to say to them, start walking. It's just be there, Moshe. They'll understand from within themselves, and that's really what happens. And they walk across the sea. Anyway, we're coming up on today's event. but this is very important for us to recognize the path and the passageway here. So they walk across the sea and they get to this other side. And then it says they had awe of Hashem because they had seen what he did. And they now really trust God. Why didn't they trust God after he hit the Egyptians with the 10 plagues? Man, that was a pretty good show there, like lightning and thunder and everything in between, of hail and locusts and lice, and man, like I think I'd have the idea by the end of all of that, and put my faith in the one who's doing this. No. But listen how powerful this is. They're only able to put their reliance on Hashem after they discover from within themselves the reliance upon themselves, that when Hashem just tells Moshe, be there, they will know what to do. And this is a very important principle, which actually the Navi says in a verse, which I'm sorry I don't have in front of me. Te'amnu v'ta'aminu. When you become believable, you will believe, right? When you become trusting, then you will be able to trust. And this is a very important piece of the picture we're headed towards for us to understand why this day is so special. Okay? So there they are. And they have achieved this level of, in a way, experiencing Hashem as like this mother, the matriarch, the mom, the ima, by virtue of the emunah, right, which has been accessed now. And then what do? Well, they do something which we're about to see is a very important word. It says, "Az yashir Moshe uvnei Israel et hashira hazot ladonai vayomri lemor ashira ladonai ki gaugasus v'ochor ha'ayam." What word seems to keep repeating itself in that verse? Az yashir Moshe uvnei Yisrael. Well, Yisrael, but Yisrael, like interesting. Et hashira hazot Hashem vayomru lemor. Hashira Lashem ki ga'oga'a. They start singing. And Rashi says beautifully on this verse something which will be a real takeaway for you, especially anyone who sings, but anyone really who wants to live. Rashi says, this is weird. It says, Az Yashir. Now, anyone who knows Hebrew knows that Az is the past tense, then, like in the past tense, right? Did you teach you that in Montreal? Did you go to Hebrew school?
Not really.
Okay, so let me give you a little Hebrew lesson. Az is, you're the only one I know, like I'm going to talk to you. Anyhow, Az is the past tense. Yashir is the future tense. Then he will sing. Wait a minute. Az Yashir, what do you mean? And then he will sing? How does that work? How could he be traversing time that way? So first of all, the rabbis say, well, he does traverse time, and we're going to see Moshe again in the future time when everyone else is resurrected along with him. Okay, that's nice. But Rashi doesn't go there. Rashi says, he also mentions that, but he says something on the level of pshat, on the level of the simple reading, which is a very profound reading. And that is that he did awaken in his heart so that his heart told him, you will sing. Now's the time to sing. Az Yashir, I'll read it inside. The Rashi is a very beautiful Rashi. For those of you who want to look it up later. So we're at the beginning of chapter 15, of course, of Shemot. Az Yashir, Az Kshera'a Hanes, Allah Bilibo Shiashir Shira. Yeah. Then, past tense, when he saw the miracle, his heart was awakened to sing. This is like, wow. first of all, I take this as guidance in singing, you know what I mean? Like, don't ever sing anything unless your heart is in it, unless your heart has awakened to sing it. This is actually the first time in the Torah that anyone mentions singing. It's the first singer. By the way, Moshe is the first singer. You know, you don't think usually of Moshe as the singer. You know, he's like the guy there with Pharaoh telling him, you know, let my people go or else. And then he's up on the mountain and he comes down and breaks the tablets. And then he's like, oh my gosh, you know, like he doesn't seem like the singer type, but he's the first one to sing. And not only that, he sings only because his heart was awakened to sing. Okay, that's the Az Yashir. Okay, so Vayaminu Bashem Moshe Abdo, they are realizing the reliability, the motherhood of Moshe and of Hashem, and what comes up for them is song. Okay, and in fact, the Talmud says they sang that song as an expression of having that emunah. And I want to tell that's second principle with song. Never sing unless you feel trusting. You know, it's not so easy to sing, right? You know, it's like to stand in front of an audience and sing. Like, I think that's probably why they turn the lights off so the singer doesn't have to see the audience. It's like, you know what I mean? Like you start seeing all those faces and you start wondering, like, why did she do that? Why did he might move that in his eye that way? He doesn't know that there's a fly running around his eye. He thinks he's giving it some cynical look, you know, it's like, and you start getting like freaked out, and then your voice starts choking up, right? You can't really sing open unless you have emunah. You can't really sing open unless you feel like this space is holding you and that they have belief in you. Yeah, so the rabbis actually teach this. They say that they sang in the merit of the emunah. The song came up in the merit of the emunah. This is one of the ways that, you know, people are used to seeing this as sort of like a moralistic or religious type teaching in the merit of their belief. So God gave them the song, you know, as a reward. The rabbis really don't talk that way. They're actually talking existentially, meaning that what they're describing is that by virtue of that state of emunah, they were able to sing. Okay, and that song was a song which came up with this powerful authenticity of coming straight up out of their hearts. Okay, so this is very important because then the next comment Rashi makes, and now it's going to really make sense to you. The next comment Rashi makes is, and you know, the rabbis learned from here that there's going to be a resurrection of the dead in the future time, and Moshe is going to come back and he's going to sing. Az Yashir, meaning not in the past tense, but in the future tense, he's going to sing. Right? And I believe these are completely intertwined as statements, meaning if you live your life from your heart with a clear sense of the reliability of Hashem in his world, then you will be awakened to sing with the whole of your being, and the whole of your being will then become eternal. Not just your soul, but your body will also be in some form. We don't know exactly what form, but in some form, you're going to come back in this body. It's a weird idea. It's one of our tenets, but it's a very beautiful and powerful interrelationship between, I'm not just singing from the mouth out, nor am I holding it in my heart. I am singing because my heart has been awakened. So my whole body is in this right now. I'm in full and complete response to what's happening. And now you get it because we just went over the sea of endings and touched the unending one, right? That was the sense that we had at the beginning. And here he is, and he is singing. Okay? Now, remember, I pointed out some words on the way that they saw, right? And they had awe in their seeing, okay? We're going to skip ahead now as we move towards the verse, which is going to be the featured verse. With me, the featured verse might come in the last 30 seconds, but like, going to be the featured verse soon. We'll get there. So like, there they go across the sea. They've gone across the sea. They sing the song, but then Miriam, and listen right now, women. Miriam takes the prophetess, Miriam, the sister of Aaron, and takes the drum. She goes out with the women, and she declares, "Shiru l'Adonai ki ka'ugasus v'rocho ramavaya." Sing out to God. Okay, and what she says is also really interesting, but we're going to leave it there for now, because now try to listen to the Hebrew as I translated it along the way, but you'll start hearing words which seem pretty interesting. Okay, so we have Miriam, right? Miriam is the sister. Okay, so then it says, Vayasa Moshe et Yisrael miyam suf, vayetzu el midbar Shur. They go from Yam Suf to a place called the desert of Shur. Sound familiar? Shir. Yeah, you're good. You probably come from Barayan. Originally, way back. It sticks with you. Anyhow, they go out into this Midbar Shur. Okay. Now, here's comes something from the Zohar, right? The word Shur, besides probably being related to sureness and emunah, right? Would put it past God's world, but the word Shur actually is related to. That's because you moved away from Barayan. The word Shur is related to seeing. The word for seeing in Hebrew, one of the ways you say to look at something in Hebrew is ri'iyah. And the other way is lashur, ashurenu v'lo mikarov, it says, right? Ashurenu v'lo mikarov is a verse which is in Bamidbar that Bilam says, doesn't matter, but he sees something and it's not nearby. It's a prophetic seeing. It's when you're looking from a distance. Banot sa'ada alei shur, the women went up to look at Yosef up on top of the wall, which is a play on a word because shur can also be a wall and shur can also be to look, right? Well, okay, that's what they were doing there, actually. Climbing up the walls to see Yosef. That's really what was going on there. But Lamaisa, what was going on now is that they've gone out to this desert, which is the desert of seeing and the desert of song. Very interesting. Now here, it doesn't say Daber el bnei Yisrael v'yisau. It doesn't say just talk to them and they'll start moving. Okay, it doesn't say that. Listen to the words. I'm in chapter 15, verse 22. You'll look it up later, right? It says instead, Vayasa Moshe et Yisrael miyam suf. Moshe pushed them to travel away from Yam Suf. He pushed them. Vayasa is a hif'il. How do you say that in English? Anyone know what? Not reflexive. The opposite one. When it's a causative. Yeah, what's that called? It's a causative verb, I think, where you push someone. Okay, fine. Active. Anyhow, he pushed them, right? Drove them away. Thank you. He drove them away. My gosh. Before it was just talk to them and they'll go. Now he's got to drive them away. Why does he have to drive them away? So listen to this. The Zohar says, because they were still seeing God at Yam Suf. They didn't want to leave. We've gotten to the end. Why should we go from here? They didn't want to go. So he asked God to move his presence, right? Basically means to shift their consciousness so that instead of perceiving God over the sea and the miracle of the splitting, they would now see God. That's Midbar Shur. They would now see Hashem out there over the desert, and then they started walking in order to follow Hashem's presence because they were so filled with a yearning for his nearness and presence. That's Midbar Shur. So I'm going to listen to you in just a sec. So that the Shira that they sang, right, was after they saw Hashem and knew that they could rely on him like a child relies on their mother. And then they again see Hashem, but in a distance, and they start walking after him. Okay? And just one more sec, okay? And then it says, Vayavo Marata. And they go to a place which is called Mara, which means bitter, which isn't so far from the name Miriam. Remember her, right? They come to this place and the waters are bitter. And it says, V'lo yachlu lishtot mayim mimara ki marim hein. They couldn't drink waters from Mara because they were bitter. Who was bitter? The waters were bitter? The people were bitter. Yeah, you got that right away. Ki marim hein, it's really probably a double entendre. Like, the waters are bitter because the people are bitter. Yeah, they are bitter because the waters that they had experienced were waters which revealed the divine, and now they're back in the physical reality of forms in which they're no longer in contact with him. And so they're experiencing this bitterness. Okay? Okay, we're together here? Yeah, what was there back there?
Just a small question, because I don't have. Well, what they saw going ahead of them, so that was the pillar of fire and the cloud, like that's when it comes in?
No, the pillar of fire and everything have already been with them, and they're probably with them in their encampment. But there's a deeper vision of the divine before, sure. Yeah. Sure, chapter 12, 13, 14, it's there. But what's happening here over the Yam Suf was that they had a vision of the divine, which the rabbis say that like even the simplest person at Yam Suf saw what Yechezkel later saw when he saw the vision of the chariot. Thank you. Mashallah. Yeah, so that's not just the cloud and the fire. That's just a different level of divine access, which is what they're experiencing. Amazing, yeah. Sure.
So where was
Yeah, that's not. I'm just reading Chumash right now. There's a midrash which has Nachshon having to walk in. Oh yeah, Nachshon is from. Okay, so here we are now. Now we're moving up on things. So they complain, Vayilonu. They say, what are we going to drink? Now Moshe again calls out to Hashem, and God shows him a tree, a stick, a tree. Vayoreu Hashem eitz. Okay, he showed him a tree. And he threw it into the water, and the waters became sweet. So again, just going back to the Zohar for a moment, right? What he showed him, right? What he showed him was the tree of life, according to the Zohar. Vayashlech el hamayim, it doesn't say what he threw into the water. It says again, Vayoreu Hashem eitz, God showed him a tree. And then it says, and he threw, it doesn't even say he threw it. It just says he threw into the water. What did he throw into the water? I actually don't know. But it doesn't sound like it was the tree. Otherwise it would have said, Vayashlech oto el hamay. Again, he's standing in the presence of this force of life, which sweetens the bitter waters. The Zohar continues and says that tree of life, that's Torah. That's being able to hear Hashem speak Eitz chayim hi lamachazikim ba. If you listen with an open heart and an open ear to the divine speaking, so vayorehu is a hint at Torah, and actually then it says Sham Sam Lochoku Mishpat Sham Nisau. This is the first time when Hashem started talking to them, not just about how he's going to take them out of Egypt, but how they can live their lives in a way that's aligned with his being. And this is actually the first moment in the Torah when we have something which we end up saying twice a day. Vayomer im shamoa tishma, right? Vayim shamoa tishmu, right? Vayomer im shamoa tishma lekol Adonai Elohecha vayashar beinav taseh vazanta lemitzvotav shamarta kol chukav. Oh my gosh! Wow, this is mamish. Sounds like the language of the Torah that's going to be much later in Deuteronomy, right? I mean, listening to his mitzvot. What mitzvot? Mitzvot. I mean, yeah, we're weeks away from getting the Torah. I mean, what mitzvot? Well, God gave them a taste of what life can be when you have an access point through your body to touching the divine, which is really, 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 really what mitzvah is meant to awaken in us as a possibility. You can meet the divine. You can meet that vision of God that you saw there of the infinite one you didn't want to walk away from. You can, when you come back to this world and the waters taste bitter, man, they taste bitter. It's like compared to the bliss of the experience of that vision, which they had just had, which just opened them up beyond any endpoint, right? Beyond anything which would be limited and standing in contradiction to the expanse of life. Oh man, like anything here is going to be bitter, right? Yeah. So Hashem shows him this tree of life, which is, as we see, somehow related to the possibility of something called mitzvah, which is, may not have the best associations to everyone, but let's sweeten that word for a moment. And mitzvah, and understand that this is not just a game with the word mitzvah, meaning connection. It actually does mean connection, and I'm going to prove it to you from English. How do you translate the word mitzvah into English? What's a mitzvah called in English? A command. You ever think about that word, command? What are those first three letters in the word Kohn, man? What other words have those first three letters? Communicate. Some more. Come closer, come. Like some more words. Come on, these are the nice words.
Communism.
Communism, okay. That's fine. I'm not, yeah. I'll listen to you later. What I know it did. Community. Complete. Thank you. Now you're back on track. Community. Completion. COM is a word which has to do with holding things together. Of course, a compartment is like that because it's just that the part is what's delineating the boundaries for what is in communion in there. Now, this is very interesting, right? Because in Hebrew, I'm using this as a way to kind of warm us up to the fact of something which people don't usually think is real. In Hebrew, the word for getting together with a group is lihitzavot, a tzevet. A tzevet is a staff in the sense of a staff sitting around the table, not the staff that you guide people with, although that play on words is actually an interesting one, but we'll put that one aside for a different opportunity. But a tzevet is a staff when people sit together and discuss something, right? And they communicate with each other. That's interesting, right? I mean, this actually is mentioned by Rashi way back in the story of Noah, which we're not going to go into right now, except to point out that they were brought male and female litzavot, so that they should be able to be communing with each other, right? It's a very powerful thing, but the point is that mitzvah is, what's that?
It's from a payroll, right?
What's a perush?
The word.
Oh, right now I'm giving you a perush. So that I'm not a, yeah, and also you can find this in the Midrash, but that is less important to me right now than letting people see that actually what the Midrash says is true. Sometimes people quote authorities and like, okay, that's what they said, I'll buy it, But no, this is actually true. That and it is mentioned in the Midrash, and it became a very Hasidic kind of orientation, but it's really rooted, it truly is rooted, and that's why I go this way rather than appealing to a textual authority, but rather like just look at this, man. This is for real. That the tzvat and the tzaddik vav is like in English the COM, right? Which is that there's an opportunity for communing. Why is this so important? Because you have a people that has just experienced the most heightened consciousness in this apparently an extraordinary bliss, which made it very difficult for them to leave where they were. And they're not going to be aroused from within this time around, right? And so the only thing to happen is for Moshe to send, so to speak, to shift their awareness to seeing Hashem far away off in the desert, and then the waters go bitter. The waters go bitter.
There's another that this fits in beautifully, an English word that makes the same point of the word mitzvah, tzedek, that brings brings things together, and that is to enjoin. To enjoin means to command somebody.
Nice.
Enjoin is actually in the word to enjoin.
Waldick, thank you. What's your name?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're from Nachlaot?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I run the program of the women's program in Nachlaot, and
I see. Okay. Well, I want to tell you, women had a great teacher. So that's beautiful. Right. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, to enjoin. I didn't think of that. To enjoin someone is actually to encourage them to do something. It's a little less than command, but yeah, kind of the same. Yeah, beautiful. Amazing. So you see that. That's the orientation. Command has less to do with forcing you and insisting, and more to do with calling to align with, join me and commune. So it's as if Hashem says, you know how we're going to sweeten these waters? If you listen to my voice, okay, don't listen to my mitzvahs, listen to my voice. And this is actually a deal the Talmud makes in a different verse in the Masechet Nedarim, where it talks about a verse in Yirmiyahu, but anyone who wants that source, I'll give it later. But the point is, Im Shamot Tishmu L'Kol Hashem Elokecha. It's an amazing thing. Listen to my voice, okay? Don't listen to what I'm saying. Listen to my voice. My words will come later, okay? V'hayashar beinav taseh. Listen how beautifully the word shir became shur, became yashar. It's like amazing, right? You're awakened to the vastness of the divine and you sang. Then you lost it, so you were shown it. Now it's just so far away. How about if you become the song yourself by being Yashar? Same letters, Shin, Yud, Resh, Shin, Yud, Shin, Resh. Yashar. Yeah, Yashir, Yashar. There you go. As Yashir Moshe has now become Yashar. Be aligned. Be in tune. If we're already playing with words, with music. Be in tune, be attuned, right? To be yashar actually has a musical aspect to it, right? People don't usually notice that, right? To be yashar is to be attuned, right? No, meaning that, like, it's not that I'm straight as a rod, although you could talk about that. I come from the South, actually, as straight as a rod, but it's kind of less about straight as a rod and more about the guy's attuned, right? And that attunement is that which will enable you to not lose the divine off in the distance, and I'm just going to spend my entire life chasing him. But rather, Hashem says, how are we going to sweeten these waters? Vayoreu Hashem eitz, vayashlechem amai. He shows him this tree of life, and that tree of life is the antithesis to the tree of delineations, tov vara, etc., etc. It's this tree which empowers you to discover God embodied with how you live. Yeah, so now, hazanta lemitzvotav, now that you've heard his voice, now turn your ears towards his mitzvot, your ear. But listen how beautifully that is, because an ear is also the same word in Hebrew as balance. You know that ozen in Hebrew is the ear, and le'azein means to balance, right? It does, doesn't it? I wonder how they knew that back then. I guess so. That's pretty interesting, actually. It's a relatively late discovery that your balance is impacted by what's going on in your ears, determined by what's going on in your ears. In any case, we'll put that aside. That's small stuff compared to where we're about to go. And that is V'shamarta kol chukav, and you keep his chukim. Okay, here's the first. Kol hamachala asher samti b'Mitzrayim lo asim alecha ki ani Adonai rofecha. Okay, and here I want to touch this with you just for a couple of more moments before we stop and do a meditation together. And that is what? Like what? What did you just say? Like, who was talking about illness? How do we get to illness? I mean, a little bit strange. I mean, were people really so sick in Egypt? I mean, what are we talking about when we're talking about sickness? Clearly, what we're talking about when we're talking about sickness, kol hamachaleh shasamti b'Mitzrayim lo asim alecha, as the sickness in Egypt was everything being out of whack, right? We talked about those before, right? Because get this, it's really important. What they saw in Egypt was not redemption. They saw them being smitten, right? To be smitten, to be whacked out of line, right? To be imbalanced and no longer in the nature of things. That is dis-ease. That's disease. That's dis-ease. And in fact, the Hebrew word for holy, which is illness, holy, is the same word you use to talk about the sand on the seashore. Why, when someone is chole, I mean, what's so sandy about being sick? Well, I think you get a sense, hopefully, because sand is granulated and non-connective. And therefore, it's a reflection and representation of things being disordered, imbalanced, out of whack. That's the machala that was in Mitzrayim. They weren't, it's not that they were sick, right? Like when the river turned red, it's not that the people were sick, the world was out of order. You can see now why there was no singing when they left Egypt, because they hadn't seen Hashem really. They just saw the sickness which forced the Egyptians to let them go. But nobody just, I mean, here, I should just opened the sea. I mean, this is like amazing. He opened the sea for them to walk across, okay? So just to understand that, you only sing when you see Yosher, right? When you see things aligned, even if it's unnatural, it's not sick, okay? It's sick when the world is being smitten. It's not sick when the world of forms is being opened to expose that which is beneath it. You hear that? Okay, so this is like kol ha'machala shasamti b'Mitzrayim lo asim alecha ki ani Hashem rofecha. Ani Hashem rofecha, because I am your healer. I'm sorry, what's that?
It makes you see the connection.
Chain.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one too. Shasha. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Well, that's probably sure. Shasheret and a shoresh. Yeah, there's a lot we could play with this one, like Yerusha. We could go on forever. Rashi might have to say about this. Anyhow, okay, enough kidding around. So, now listen to Rashi on this. I think Rashi is a little bit disturbed. It says like, לפי הפשוטו, אני השם רופאך מלמדך תורה ומצוות, למען תנצל מהם. I'm going to teach you that which you need to know in order to be saved from this dis-ease and disorder, okay? Hirofeh ze, like a healer who says, L'adam, don't eat this. They're going to make you sick. Zeu izun mitzvot. Let me explain what's going on. There's actually a difficulty in the verse. Who chops the difficulty in the verse? Listen again, okay? All of the illnesses that I put on Egypt, I will not put on you, because I am Hashem, your healer.
He doesn't put it, why does it need to heal?
That's right. You don't need a doctor if you're not sick. A doctor heals you from what went wrong. People used to think that way. But Ani Hashem Rofecha, if I'm not sick, because I didn't have those illnesses, I don't need God to be my Rofeh. Rofeh is a healer, isn't it? No, Rashi says. Explain it to you. The real task of the Rofeh isn't to heal you after you got sick. The real task of the Rofeh is to instruct you as to how you should live so you don't get sick. Like the Jewish way.
Chinese.
Not necessarily. There is Chokhmah Bagayan.
Not necessarily. Anyhow, I didn't say not the Chinese way, I just said the Jewish way. So, in any case, I don't really want to get into that. So, therefore, right, Ani Hashem Rofecha means that I am your healer in the present tense of being with you always. And listen to this amazing Rashi. This is absolutely genius, right? Listen to the Rashi. He says that this healer says to him, don't eat this, don't eat that, because they're going to make you sick. V'zeu, it's too much. V'zeu izun mitzvot. This is, now literally, the ha'azanta l'mitzvotai, this is listening to the mitzvot. That's what it literally would translate as, but you'll miss everything if you only hear it in English. Because the same word izun, which means to listen to, Rashi is purposely choosing to describe balancing. Because izun in Hebrew is balance. Listening to his mitzvot is about balance, okay? It's about all the parts fitting together in a synchronicity of interconnection, which empowers those granules of sand to be an organism that functions. Okay. And then he finishes his brilliant, amazing play with words. V'cheinu omer, just like it says in Mishlei about the Torah, rifut tehi l'sarecha. It's going to be a healing, or it's health. Really, rifut here is, it's not a healing, it's health for your sarecha. Sarecha is a shortened way of saying bisarecha, for your flesh. But it's the same root again of shin and resh. Well, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the sarecha as bisarecha, referring to this vision. And now let's go back. To envision something is to be able to see it its wholeness, correct? Oftentimes when we listen, it's linear, but when you see, it's holistic. They saw, they were healed in that. And not just healed in the sense of, they got better, they got well, but rather they became people whose reality was so aligned and balanced that they won't get sick, That's what we yearn for. So this story that I just told you from the beginning of the passage across Yam Suf, right, and what happened there, and they're arriving now in this place, right, where the waters were bitter and they became sweetened, is, I think, one of the best teachings for this middle way point we are now in Sfirat HaOmer, not exactly middle, but we're, moving away from the excitement of Nisan, moving into ER, which is that month where, at least from the Torah, nothing happens except you're just counting and waiting. And here you are looking forward to that vision again. And the waters start getting more bitter. And you begin to feel like, oh, and after that big holiday, like we got another, how many days until we get to the next one? So finding interpenetration and interconnection between the elements, which make it possible for you to be balanced with what's real, aligned with what's alive, right? Is, I think, the greatest sweet. Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. Thank you. It really was. And that the first day, but that would be like a whole other shear, but at least to throw it, or maybe someone else will give that shear. But because I want to save some time to play the song. Because it's something about shear.
The modern holidays.
Yeah, I will in just a sec. But I wanted to just point out that the Mida of Tiferet, which is the one we began counting with Rosh Chodesh, is the same letters as Rifut. The same Rifut that Rashi quoted from Mishlei is exactly the same letters of Tiferet, which is healing. Now, why is Tiferet healing? Because it's balance. There, we have Kabbalists in the group. Because it's balance. It's the middle line which incorporates and interconnects the extensions and realigns them with that middle point of the tree. So it's with that I will try and give us a bit of attunement with some notes as you close your eyes.
Rabbi, I hate to say this, but we have problems. The bus is already waiting for us.
I was told I have until 5:10. That'll be okay. What's that? Does it look like I'm going to spend more than 5 minutes at this? I will keep that in mind. I won't go more than 3 minutes. It's all it really, you know what? I can do it in 1 minute. Not really. So no. If you just, but you have to cooperate if you want it to be short and succinct. Yeah. No. If you want it to penetrate, so just close your eyes. Don't have to look at me. You can watch the film later. Take a deep breath. You've had a beautiful day here, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm really positive about that. I'm sure. And we're not using a Shure microphone for this either. So you can be sure of that. Anyhow, so here is your moment now to just enjoy the izun of the ha'azana with the yosher of the shir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, joy, pleasure, really. Thanks for coming. Who are you guys?